Thanks for joining us for today's episode of Knoll Days. As always, I'm your host, Carrie, along with my co-host, founder of Historical Tours of Greater Holyoke, Robert Como. Our Knoll Days series delves into the vast collection of historical sites throughout Massachusetts, with Robert's expertise of the local history as our personal guide. Each episode, we uncover history throughout local communities with historic landmarks and remaining relics, all while uncovering their seminal significance. Today's episode of Knoll Days, we'll be learning about the Knoll Cemetery located in Palmer, Massachusetts. So, there is a section within the cemetery which contains the cemetery's oldest gravestones. Can you reveal what that section is called?
It's called the South Cemetery, and it was there before there was an old Knoll, and they got surrounded by kind of like a new cemetery wrapping around it. And it was very close to downtown or the depot station area of Palmer. Palmer is 4 villages. It was close to the most populated one, the busiest one, and where the government was. Usually that kind of cemetery was moved in most communities around the United States because it's on prime real estate, and they went through a phase from 1880 to about 19 teens where they thought these old cemeteries were ugly, so they oftentimes moved them. So we'll talk about the year that's made special characteristics or features within the cemeteries, and hopefully you come to understand it better. But it was made such that some of the stones are older than the Revolutionary War, and those stones would have the body of the person with their head pointing towards the east, and their headstone would be pointing towards the east, footstone towards the west. And then after the Revolutionary War, it was totally 180-degree change. Now, you might see a couple stones that never been moved around this side there if you look around, and that's wonderful to see. But you'll see some footstones there, always wonderful to see, still paired off correctly with their headstones. And after 1776, they're pointing in the right direction. That is, these little footstone inscriptions point towards the east, and headstones towards the west. And so that portion of time phase was never changed around.
And clarify when the section was originally made and where within the cemetery it's located.
Okay, it was the cemetery, the South Cemetery was made in 1732, and thus is the oldest cemetery of Palmer, of the many that it has. I believe it has 5 Protestant cemeteries. And this is where some of the pioneers of Palmer are located. And to find this, you go towards the portion that is closest to Thorndike Street. If you're looking into the front gate of this Knoll Cemetery, it'd be towards the far right along one of the side streets. It's pointing in the direction that's very close to where the governmental businesses are, where Depot Square is, where the historic district is, so forth and so on. So it's a very cozy looking place. All right, so keep that in mind when we go on to the next questions, because we're going to have to repeat over and over again some of the more characteristics of a newer cemetery wrapping around this one.
And stick around and we'll be right back after this quick break and quick announcement. Are you fascinated by local history and eager to investigate the obscure treasures off the beaten path throughout the state of Massachusetts? Or maybe just seeking an unforgettable cultural activity for family and friends to enjoy? Look no further than Historical Tours of Greater Holyoke, founded by Robert Como. With over a decade of experience, Robert offers captivating tours and presentations of historic sites and landmarks throughout the state. Whether you're interested in canals, cemeteries, charming churches, or more, Robert's tours provide a unique and enriching experience for all. And that's not it. You can also schedule private tours tailored to your interests, ensuring a personalized adventure and unforgettable memories. Perfect for families or groups of all sizes, making for an exciting hands-on learning experience that brings history to life. Simply visit holyokecanaltour.org or email bobcat4214 capital B at yahoo.com to book your private tour today. Getting back to our video podcast. So surrounding this section is the modern day gravestones. Can you describe the characteristics of the circumjacent modern stones?
I would call the cemetery that wraps around it, that we call Oak Knoll, that wraps around the South Cemetery. I would call that a garden-style cemetery. The first garden-style cemetery in the United States was in Massachusetts in 1823, and it was the Mount Auburn Cemetery. And it's also called a rural cemetery. So you have a very rare situation. That rare situation is that you have a garden-style cemetery in the downtown area, the Depot Square area of Palmer, and they left the old cemetery in place, and usually those old cemeteries were moved to a other geographic location within the town, and so you're wrapping one style around an old churchyard cemetery. Usually it's the other way around. You put these garden-style cemeteries, also called rural cemeteries, out in the far reaches of the town, and then people say, oh, let's move these stones into that gorgeous cemetery that's in the outskirts. And it gets done. But Palmer never did that. So you have a very rare case around Massachusetts where stones are still there, positioned the same way, in their old location, and everyone can enjoy it the way that it's meant to be, but a modern style cemetery, a garden style, wraps right around it. And this is very unusual. And so hopefully I can give a tour there someday where people can see the properties of the cemetery, and they can enjoy it for what it is, because it's a cemetery that is very different from others in Massachusetts, never moved, and has the modern properties.
And describe any unique or distinguishable features throughout the cemetery.
All right, there's a Holden tomb on one end. It's up a bit on the hill, so you can tell that it was put in later when the garden-style cemetery was being fashioned to put around it. So that's one thing. They also have a tribute monument to the 4 villages that make up Palmer, and they put that in to honor the community. And it's also with a lot of nice trees. So usually in garden-style cemeteries, the rural-style cemetery, you have nice trees planted for a reason that they're very nicely ornamental trees. You have bushes and flowers and sometimes fountains to help make the whole look very, very gorgeous. Now, in this case here, the trees are nice, but not too many flowers have been put in. The one feature that's real nice is that they put a terraced landscape on the elevated portions. They put a nice gate in and roadways that curve around, and then the back portion to the left, it's up raised above the rest of the cemetery with a lot of trees, and so you get a nice shaded area, more curved path, and you get good views of the rest of Palmer, especially towards the south. And so this is a nice historic cemetery kept in place with the modern one with its own features. And it's very unusual to have this in Massachusetts, where they tried to fashion after Mount Auburn's situation. And when they moved all churchyard cemeteries, they were moved into the outskirts. Didn't happen here. So very different place. In the orientation, the headstones again are correct. So wonderful.
And thank you for tuning in to Canal Days and our episode on the Oak Knoll Cemetery in Palmer, Massachusetts, and joining us on our journey through the rich history of the Connecticut River Valley. We hope you enjoyed uncovering some of the hidden and overlooked marvels and their fascinating stories that shaped our past and the state of Massachusetts. A special thanks to Robert Camus, founder of Historical Tours of Greater Holyoke, for sharing his passion and expertise with us. Remember, you can find more information about Robert's tours, book private tours, and explore the Canal Days video and podcast series at holyokecanaltour.org. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, comment, and share. We'd love to hear your thoughts and suggestions for future episodes. Don't forget to keep exploring and discovering history that is hidden in plain sight all around us. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to tune into our next episode of Canal Days and log on to holyokecanaltour.org. Until next time. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us for today's episode of Canal Days. As always, I'm your host, Gary, along with my co-host, founder of Historical Tours of Greater Holyoke, Robert Como. Our Canal Days series delves into the vast collection of historical sites throughout Massachusetts, with Robert's expertise of the local history as our personal guide. Each episode, we uncover histories throughout local communities, with historic houses, meaningful monuments, preeminent pivotal pioneers, and remarkable remaining remnants, all while uncovering their seminal significance. Today's episode of Canal Days will be discussing the cemeteries located within Palmer, Massachusetts. So, Robert, describe the Catholic cemeteries within Palmer.
Okay, the Catholic cemeteries of Palmer are the St. Thomas Cemetery, which is from the year 1864. Its all burials are towards the middle right, and there you find a lot of old Irish burials. And this cemetery is the oldest Catholic cemetery within Palmer itself. The newest Catholic cemetery is the St. Peter and Paul Cemetery. Its church might have came in 1905, but its cemetery came in 1947. And they used, along the way, the St. Anne's Cemetery. So in St. Anne's Cemetery, you find both French-Canadian and Polish until 1947. And likewise, the French Canadians, those from Quebec, used the St. Thomas Cemetery until the St. Anne's Cemetery opened up for them. And that was in 1889. So you find old Quebec burials in St. Thomas, you find old Polish burials in St. Anne, so forth. Now, the St. Anne's Cemetery we're going to talk about later, and we're going to talk about, of course, the Protestant cemeteries. And we're also going to talk about a lot of these have in common. But 3 Catholic cemeteries in one not so large community is actually pretty good, but it signifies the 3 vast ethnic groups that came in to serve the 3 large canals and the many mills that were in Palmer.
And can you describe, too, for us the Protestant cemeteries?
Well, I would count the Protestant cemeteries as being 4, but I would add an extra one, a 5th one, and I'll explain why towards the end. The oldest one nowadays is called the Knoll Cemetery, probably from about 1727. Inside of it, you have a very old section, and a lot of the burials are still in the correct orientation on the east-west axis and headstone towards the west. Awesome to see. All right, there's also the Palmer Center Cemetery, a little harder to find. It's from 1737. It was made to serve people that were a little bit off in a different section of Palmer. Palmer is such a large community with 4 villages to it, and so it had to have all these cemeteries in different places. And then there's the Four Corners Cemetery from the year 1822. This one here is definitely made to be a neighborhood cemetery to serve that section of Palmer. And then there's the Three Rivers Thorndike, the last one from 1830. And those are the 4 official cemeteries along the way. Now, I would count there as being a 5th cemetery for Protestants, and thus a total of 8 cemeteries for all. And that's because the South Burial Ground was there, and then they decided to put a garden-style cemetery wrapped around it. And so thus you can really see where the South Burial Ground is still within this Knoll Cemetery that now contains it. And that is the oldest burial. A lot of the pioneers, because of geographic location and the date it was made, are in this South burial ground. So it's very, very important. Now, there's no Jewish cemeteries, but those definitely are found in Springfield and West Springfield. And as far as I know at this point, there's no Native American burial sites. But, of course, that is always hard to find.
And stick around and we'll be right back after this quick announcement. Are you fascinated by local history and eager to investigate the obscure treasures off the beaten path throughout the state of Massachusetts? Or maybe just seeking an unforgettable cultural activity for family and friends to enjoy? Look no further than Historical Tours of Greater Holyoke, founded by Robert Camus. With over a decade of experience, Robert offers captivating tours and presentations of historic sites and landmarks throughout the state. Whether you're interested in canals, cemeteries, charming churches, and more, Robert's tours provide a unique and enriching experience for all. And that's not it. You can also schedule private tours tailored to your interests, ensuring a personalized adventure and unforgettable memories. Perfect for families and groups of all sizes, making for an exciting hands-on learning experience that brings history to life. Simply visit holyokecanaltour.org or email bobcat4214 at yahoo.com to book your private tour today. Welcome back to our episode of the Cemeteries of Palmer, Massachusetts. And can you characterize the various styles of the cemeteries?
Yes. Well, there's 5 styles of cemeteries, so let me see which one I can associate with each one. But a lot of them have multiple styles to it. Now, the easiest one to figure out is Oak Knoll, with the South burial ground inside of it. That is a churchyard style cemetery with that old part. But the part wrapped around it, added to it, and called Oak Knoll, is a garden style cemetery with curved rows and curved paths and undulation of the terrain and decoration with trees and bushes. All right. Now, the Palmer Center Cemetery also is a churchyard-style cemetery, very old burials inside of there. Not very uniform rows at all. The Three Rivers Thorndike is a neighborhood cemetery, and the Four Corners Cemetery is also a neighborhood cemetery. A close relative of churchyard, but put out in far distances away and where these other villages were growing up in order for there to be a cemetery near the village. All right, now the Catholic cemeteries, St. Peter's and Paul Cemetery is a lawn-style cemetery. The St. Anne Cemetery is a lawn-style cemetery. And the St. Thomas Cemetery is a lawn-style cemetery, but with some undulation of the terrain. Now, there are known what are called family cemeteries inside of Palmer. The reason why is probably because they got these neighborhood cemeteries that grew up very quickly, and that allowed for families to always have a cemetery nearby.
And are there any unique features within any of the cemeteries? And can you describe them for us?
Well, I like that the Oak Knoll wraps around the old South burial grounds. That's really cool. You can still see old with some new, designs are mixed together. One of the strangest or most peculiar things is that the baby, non-baptized baby section at the St. Anne Cemetery is into the woods and down and partially down a hill. And there's also a couple of adults out there which were probably suicide victims that had to be buried off of holy ground. So you get these peculiarities. If you go to the event, I'll have some year where I go through the burial grounds of Palmer. Then I'll talk about more of these situations. And I hope to have tours of every one of them.
And thank you for listening to our Canal Days episode of the Cemeteries within Palmer, Massachusetts, and joining us on our journey through the rich history of the Connecticut River Valley. We hope you enjoyed uncovering some of the hidden and overlooked marvels and their fascinating stories that shaped our past in the state of Massachusetts. A special thanks to Robert Camus, founder of Historical Tours of Greater Holyoke, for sharing his passion and expertise with us. Remember, you can find more information about Robert's tours, book private tours, and explore the Canal Days video and podcast series at holyokecanaltour.org. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, comment, and share. We'd love to hear your thoughts and suggestions for future episodes. Don't forget to keep exploring and discovering history that is hidden in plain sight all around us. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to tune in to our next episode of Canal Days. And don't forget to log on to holyokecanaltour.org.